What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. We've got another blockbuster deal that has just gone down. Just days after Dame was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, which of course was a move that completely shocked the NBA world to its core, set the Bucks up as potential championship favorites and Eastern Conference favorites, Jrue Holiday has also now been moved. He was a player that wasn't going to be in Portland for long. They've got a young backcourt over there with Scoot, with Simons. They've got Shaedon Sharpe as well. There was no reason for them to hold on to a 30-plus-year-old Jrue Holiday, and all the reports were that he was going to be traded at some point soon. And there were a number of teams that were interested. The Philadelphia 76ers were mentioned as the team that had previously drafted him. Maybe James Harden is involved in a deal that gets James Harden somewhere else where he wants to go, and the Sixers land a great point guard in Jrue. You had the Miami Heat. They had just struck out on Dame and were still looking at a point guard. Maybe Jrue Holiday was the answer to help them match up with the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe the Clippers were involved in getting Jrue Holiday if Harden really wasn't realistic. So many options for Jrue to go to, but instead, he is sent, yes, back over to the Eastern Conference, but to the Bucks' biggest rival, in my opinion, in the Boston Celtics. Yes, Jrue Holiday is a Celtic. In exchange, the Blazers pick up Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, a 2024 Golden State Warriors first-round pick, and a 2029 unprotected first-round pick coming straight from Boston. It's a massive move that, again, after it was just changed drastically days ago, rapidly shifts the landscape of that Eastern Conference. First, let's go ahead and talk about the Blazers' perspective in this deal because I don't have as much to say about it, but I want to give them a shout out because I think overall they've gotten a pretty good haul for this Damian Lillard trade. In total, for giving up Dame, Nas Little, and Yusuf Nurkic, they pick up DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Tumuni Kamara, 3 first-round picks, and a 2028 and 2030 Milwaukee Bucks pick swap. It's a lot of assets. When people first saw the trade with Dame going for Jrue Holiday and just a few assets here and there, people said that the Blazers got fleeced, that they had taken a terrible deal just because they didn't want to deal with the Heat. And yeah, according to reports, they didn't want to trade with the Heat, which you can talk about whether or not that's a bad decision. But it wasn't a bad package from Milwaukee because Jrue has a lot of value. He's a really, really good, just all-star player that could benefit a lot of teams. So they end up flipping Jrue Holiday, now getting more draft capital. And again, they can still flip Malcolm Brogdon, who reportedly a lot of teams are interested in. I think they could easily get a first-round pick or some type of interesting young player in exchange for Brogdon. And that would continue to push up a trade package that already looks pretty good. They got DeAndre Ayton, who's a former first overall pick, who hasn't lived up to the hype throughout his career, but he's still been pretty good. And now you put him over there in Portland, where he's in a new situation, reportedly. He was unhappy over there in Phoenix with his role. Now he's got a chance to maybe thrive alongside Scoot, Simons, a young team where he can just showcase his game and doesn't have to worry about competing for a championship or playing like third, fourth fiddle to Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. He can do kind of whatever he wants over there in Portland, and I think that'll be good for him. Robert Williams comes over now as someone who almost won Defensive Player of the Year a few years ago. If you ask me, if he didn't get hurt at the end of that season that Marcus Smart won it, it probably would have been Rob raising that DPOY trophy. He's really good. Is he injury prone? Absolutely. He's got to stay healthy for Portland to get the true value out of him, but if he stays healthy, he was a home run acquisition as well. Tumuni Kamara was just selected in the second round, and I think he's a really interesting addition for this team too. A number of first round picks. Again, that number's going to rise with the Brogdon deal. Like, this was a good return in the Dame trade. A lot of people reacted way too quickly and didn't wait to see what Jrue got them before calling Portland big losers of this deal. I hope people realize now that this was a good decision that they went with, taking that Milwaukee deal and flipping Jrue. They got a haul out of this, and I think Portland is really well set up for the future. I'm going to make a full video breaking down Portland's future at some point here soon because I think it's extremely bright. But for now, let's talk about what this means for the Celtics because this is a really, really big deal. All summer leading up to the Dame trade, I had said that the Celtics were my favorites in the Eastern Conference, and they might have even been my championship pick before the Damian Lillard trade. Things have changed now, and I'll talk about the Bucks versus the Celtics in a moment, but all summer I had said that the Celtics were the best team in the East following the Kristaps Porzingis trade. It was a big acquisition that I personally thought made them a lot better. A lot of people talked about how losing Marcus Smart was a big blow, and yeah, it was, but KP is great. He had the best season of his career last year with the Washington Wizards, both defensively, offensively. He added a new dynamic element to the Celtics team that I personally thought they were desperately missing. Their offense continuously got really stagnant in the playoffs. They fell into iso ball, just couldn't make shots or create shots really against the Heat at times in that Eastern Conference Finals. Now you give them Kristaps, who's a 7-footer that can shoot really deep threes from like the logo and can also post up. He can finish lobs for those guys. He scored over 20 points per game. Now you've got 3 guys that did that this past season in Boston. I really like the acquisition. I also felt like Derek White could very easily step up into that starting point guard spot and replace a lot of what Marcus Smart did at times. So to me, the Celtics were big winners of that KP trade. And then the Dame trade happened, and suddenly I didn't know what to think, because looking at Dame, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, that team over there, they look like the team to beat. In my Milwaukee Bucks full breakdown video, I said that the Bucks were probably my favorites in the East at that point, but if there was one team that could still compete with them, it was the Boston Celtics, because of the talent that they have, the defense that they had, just the versatility all across the roster. Derek White being one of the best defensive guards in the league, matching up with Dame. They still had some guys that could slow Giannis down a little bit. They had a really tough front court between KP, Robert Williams, and now Horford. Chris Middleton, you could put Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown on him. I still felt like the Celtics had a shot to take down the Bucks. Were the Bucks the better team? Yeah, probably, but the Celtics were right there up with them in that number 1 tier. But now with the Jrue Holiday trade, things again kind of shift, because if there's a player that you need to acquire if you're the Celtics to slow down the Bucks, it's Jrue. Jrue Holiday, funnily enough, being involved in the Dame trade, is quite literally the Damian Lillard antidote. We saw a few years ago when the Pelicans played the Blazers in the playoffs that Jrue has the ability to lock down on Damian Lillard. He forced Dame into one of the worst playoff series of his entire career. Now he comes over to Boston as an answer to the Bucks picking up Dame. It's a full circle moment, with Jrue probably going to be extremely motivated to completely destroy the Milwaukee Bucks in any playoff series. These two teams have already had some great battles in recent history. Now it's going to be even crazier. These are by far the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference at this point, and I really don't even think it's that close. Jrue is just one of those guys that elevates whatever team he's on. We saw it during the 2021 finals run, where he was integral in helping the Bucks win that title. He made key defensive plays consistently, specifically stealing the ball from Devin Booker on that one play. He also clamped up on a bunch of individual possessions, knocked down some key shots. Jrue was great in that run. They don't win that title without Jrue Holiday. And now he comes in here to the Celtics, is going to help elevate them, and I think will also replace a lot of what Marcus Smart brought to the table. There were a lot of people when the KP trade happened that said that the Celtics were going to regret trading a guy like Smart, that gritty defensive player that makes those hustle plays. They now pick up that same guy in Jrue Holiday, who's an all-star caliber player. He's also going to bring some much needed playmaking to this team. Derek White was going to start at the 1, and I've said a couple of times, I think he would have been perfectly fine as a playmaker. He really looked good in an elevated role when we saw him in it over the course of this past season. But Jrue Holiday, we know, is a good playmaker. Put up 7.4 assists this past season, was big in orchestrating that Bucks offense. He's going to do the same thing here, and also, like Kristaps, I think will be big in the Celtics offense, looking a lot more fluid than it has in years past, especially when it comes towards the end of those really close, gritty playoff games. This is just truly an amazing squad. Brad Stevens has managed to build a ridiculous team out there in the Eastern Conference. Now, there are some concerns with this Celtics team going into this upcoming year that people are talking about that we have to note before we get towards the end of this video. The first one is they now kind of lack front court depth. Robert Williams was big on that team, and now it's just Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis down low. They've got like Luke Cornett, who's not great. They probably don't want to play him in any playoff scenario, so I wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and add another big, but luckily enough for the Celtics, they have the assets to do so. They still have some first-round picks and second-round picks that they can trade. They've got a young guy in, say, like a Jordan Walsh that they could give up in a potential deal too. Like, they still have assets to move. They didn't empty the bank with this Jrue Holiday trade. They can still upgrade this roster, and as we've seen time and time again from Brad Stevens, that's exactly what I expect them to do, similarly to how I expect the Bucks to keep upgrading their roster. In fact, they just added Cameron Payne to that team, continuing this arms race between those two squads in the Eastern Conference. There's also the concern that Jrue Holiday does drop off in the playoffs at times offensively. He's wildly inconsistent. You're going to see some games where he shoots like 3 for 13 or something like that. But this Celtics team has so many options, again, with Tatum, with Brown, with Porzingis, even with Derek White and now Horford. Like, Jrue Holiday, I don't think is going to be that featured offensively on this team. So when it comes to the playoffs, and you've got all those other guys, I don't think it's as big of a concern for this team as it might have been in the past with the Bucks, because they just have so many guys that can score the ball at a high level. Like with the Damian Lillard trade, I think a lot of people are just overthinking this thing. If you ask me, Jrue makes this Celtics team immediately better and is a much needed acquisition after the Bucks added Dame. And I just cannot stop thinking about a potential playoff matchup between these two teams. They meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, 7 games to decide who's the best team in the East. You've got Jrue versus Dame. Jrue facing the franchise that traded him away for Damian Lillard, and a guy that he's clamped up in a playoff series before. Can Damian Lillard get his revenge and make his first NBA Finals? Giannis versus Tatum, a battle of two of the best players in the entire league. You've got two teams in general that have just played each other so many times. Al Horford is looked at as like a Giannis stopper, one of the key parts of that defense in Boston that continuously tries to slow Giannis down. What can he do in that role? How is Kristaps going to play into this whole thing? From both a narrative and an on-court perspective, it would be a classic series. I cannot wait till we get that one. Fingers crossed that we actually do, and that both these teams stay healthy to that point where we can see these two teams battle in what I presume will be a 6-7 game series. If you ask me, I don't know who's the best team in the East right now. I've got to think about it for longer. I might make a full video breaking down these new look Boston Celtics and why they're going to be so good. If you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Jrue Holiday trade. Comment down below who you think won this deal. Is Jrue good or bad for Boston in terms of what they gave up? I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll see y'all later. Real One Save back.